wondering how I got into this mix.
Hey everyone, this is Derek Bros, and I am coming to you today on September 11th, 2018, for a conversation with journalist Dan Christensen, who is I believe, the founder and editor of the Florida Bulldog. Am I correct with that, Dan?
That's correct.
And if you have never heard of the FloridaBulldog.org, I definitely advise you guys to get into his website and check his past work. Dan, thank you for joining me for a few moments. I wanted to talk to you about the piece that you released just today on the 17th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. It's titled, "Judge, No Blanket Secrecy for 9/11 Documents Saudis Want Kept Secret." If you can give us, please, just a synopsis, a breakdown of what is the latest.
Well, civil litigation involving the victims, the families, relatives, and frankly the businesses that were damaged during 9/11. The Guantanamo case is something that is another avenue of this that I'm not working at.
Well, let's start with the Saudi aspect, because that's definitely one ongoing important aspect. In addition to the ongoing trial, we can put that aside for the moment, but the trial of the alleged masterminds. But for those who are somehow have missed the news, the ongoing efforts of the 9/11 family members, and as you said, businesses who are trying to bring to light the apparent role of Saudi Arabia and financing of the hijackers, and now their attempts to keep that information out of the courtroom. Let's hear about that situation.
Right. Well, this is a lawsuit that's been going on since 2003. It was stymied for many years because of the question of Saudi sovereign immunity. Congress, a couple of years ago, passed JASTA, the I think it's Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, or something similar to that. Which allowed the families, which set aside the sovereign immunity question and allowed the families to proceed with their lawsuit. And that's what's happening now. They're in what's called the discovery phase, trying to, subpoenaing information not only from the Saudis, but from the FBI and other U.S. intelligence agencies, trying to find out basically what happened and see if they can establish, a fact pattern, a chain that would allow them to demonstrate that the Saudis, who are the principal target of the lawsuit, financed and supported the hijackers.
So we are now 17 years past since the event, and I think the average American, especially those who are not up to date and keeping apprised of this case, still believe the story that it was Osama bin Laden acting alone, and most people, I would say, outside of family members, are completely unaware of other government involvement, such as Saudi Arabia, and now an apparent, I hesitate to say cover up, but it seems in that area, as far as the unwillingness of the government to participate with the family members. What is your take on this situation? As you're following this case, obviously you've talked to family members, you've communicated with them. Is there a sense that this is some type of cover up, that maybe the FBI is just doesn't want certain information to come out, or what is your take on this as a journalist, as someone who's followed this for so long?
Yeah. Well, clearly there is a strong belief that there has been a cover up, which sounds very conspiratorial, and in this case, it seems to be justified. And the reason that's so is that the government has resisted releasing information to the plaintiffs in that case. They also resisted releasing information to us in our litigation. We're currently, Florida Bulldog is currently involved in 2 lawsuits, Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, against the FBI, trying to get information about 2 things. One, we're trying to get information about an incident that occurred, or an investigation would be a better way to phrase it, that occurred just within a couple of months after 9/11 in Sarasota, Florida. there was a Saudi family there that moved out of their home in an upscale neighborhood of Sarasota about 2 weeks before these attacks, and they left behind their cars, their clothes, their food in the refrigerator, their furniture, all that stuff. They just picked up and moved out. And that caused the neighbors after 9/11 to call in and bring the FBI and local law enforcement in. That's been a question. There was an investigation that went on for at least a couple of years as a result of this. Turned out that, according to our sources, and according to documents now, the findings were that the hijackers had visited the home. We obtained a April 2002 report from the FBI that said that there were many connections, and that's their words, between these folks who used to live in Sarasota and people involved in 9/11. So that's one of our lawsuits. We're trying to get the case file in that from the FBI. It's been going on for 6 years now. In that case, the FBI was ordered by the judge to produce records. They turned over 80,000 pages. We haven't seen any of those yet. They're still before the judge, and we're waiting on the judge. It took the judge several years to go through all this. He announced last fall, I believe it was, that he had finally finished that review, and but we're still waiting on a decision from him. The other lawsuit, which was filed about 2 years ago, was seeking records of an entity called the 9/11 Review Commission. Now, everybody knows about the 9/11 Commission. That was the one that got all the publicity. They held national hearings and everything. They issued a big report. The 9/11 Review Commission began in 2014 and lasted for a year, operated pretty much in secret. Nobody really knew about it before it announced that it was issuing its report. And it was sort of run by the FBI. It didn't, there were no public hearings, that sort of thing. And we were interested in it because it was charged with doing two things. One, evaluating the FBI's post 9/11 performance, and also evaluating new evidence. We were interested in it because one of the pieces of new evidence that they allegedly evaluated was what happened in Sarasota. And their review of that was essentially one thing, and that is they said that the document that I mentioned previously about this April 2002 FBI report that said there were many connections between this family in Sarasota and the hijackers was, quote, poorly written and wholly unsubstantiated, meaning that the author of it, who was an FBI agent, basically made it up. That's kind of what they're saying there. And so we are trying to get to the bottom of all this and understand what's happened. We are currently involved in an appeal. We're waiting on a decision from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, who heard our case about a month ago. And we're appealing the judge's ruling to keep much of this secret. The FBI is appealing the judge's ruling that opened up certain portions of this. So that's kind of where we stand in our litigation right now. And on top of all this, there's a much bigger litigation in New York, in which the families are seeking to hold Saudi Arabia accountable, for what's happened. And in order to do that, they need to see what the government has in its files. And the government so far has resisted. As I think I mentioned too, they filed they subpoenaed records from the FBI. The FBI so far has turned over nothing and has given excuses as to why they shouldn't have to turn over anything. It's a kind of a disturbing set of circumstances here.
Yeah, absolutely. It does not paint a very positive, uplifting picture here on the 17th anniversary, where we're being reminded to never forget, the horrible attack and forget the sacrifice of first responders and things of that sort. Meanwhile, the families are still trying to fight to get truth and to get information out that, as you mentioned, the FBI is resisting the courts have so far not been very helpful in that as well. And we have, just sort of looking at the current picture, we have a current administration and the Obama administration, the Bush administration, continuing to partner with Saudi Arabia while they're under suspicion and it seems fairly obvious for being involved in some level at the financing of these attacks. And who knows what else other truths await to be seen within those files.
There is, I was going to say, if I might interrupt just for a second, there is some
sure.
Hopeful things happening, one of which is there is on Capitol Hill, there are pushes now to try and open up things. Most notable at the moment is a Senate resolution that's urging a broad declassification of government records related to 9/11, and it's got some heavy-duty sponsors on both sides of the aisle here, including Chuck Schumer, who's the Senate Minority Leader, and the Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn, who's a Republican out of Texas, Charles Grassley, too, who's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And there's a similar bill in the House that was filed, 6-7 months ago. So things are happening out there now that could, in addition to the New York litigation, our litigation, that could open things up here, over the next few months. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
You'll have to forgive me, Dan, if I'm less than optimistic, but I do appreciate your optimism because it's probably needed at this time. But given everything that's taken place in the last 17 years, it's a little difficult to feel that way for me. But I want to ask you now. I guess I incorrectly mentioned the Guantanamo trial, but I would still love to hear your opinion and your thoughts on that, because I'm sure you have been following that as I have been and seeing the number of setbacks and things over the years, from the defense team claiming to have been attempted at infiltrating from the FBI, being under surveillance, and just being stopped at every turn to give these men some semblance of a fair trial if it can take place. What are your thoughts on that? That it's taken 17 years to prosecute these men, and it also seems, as the trial has been going on, some of the delay is because of the fear of certain. Also in that case, the government is trying to hold back certain documentation and reports of CIA torture and things of that they don't want to go on the public record, that they don't want to be put in court.
I imagine my views on it similar to yours. The whole thing seems like a farce. It's been going on for 17 years or 16 years, whatever it's been since they've been in there. And that's not justice. I don't know what it is, but it's certainly not justice here. That's not justice, not only for those men, but certainly for the families here that are having to endure all this, year after year after year. And here we are, in 2018, and it doesn't seem as if we're any closer to getting some sort of resolution to this, an actual trial, than we were years and years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like we are still stuck in limbo. And as you said, not only, the just thinking about what these men are having to go through. And I know for a lot of Americans, they are uninterested or unable to have any sort of sympathy or empathy for these men based on what they are accused of doing. But in America, one of the great things that people celebrate about this country, especially on a day like today, is the fact that people are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and to have a day in court and where they can face their accusers and things of this sort. And that is not taking place. And also, as you mentioned, the family members who are still waiting to see some sort of justice. So I guess as we close up here, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience, just reflecting on the last 17 years on all of these different cases, these situations where it seems sometimes politicians and pundits are more interested in celebrating or remembering the day and using the first responders in some ways as a political tool, and the families as a political tool, more than they are interested in actually getting to the bottom of what exactly happened that day?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I would just urge, your listeners to pay better attention to what's going on. It's difficult because the And I'm a mainstream journalist. Okay. I mean, I've been a journalist with places like the Miami Herald, for, my entire career. I've been doing this Florida Bulldog. It's a not-for-profit news site based in South Florida, for the last, it's coming up on 9 years here, after I got laid off years ago. But I mean, I play it straight. We don't have name calling on our website. We report as if, we're reporting for a major daily newspaper. But I will say this, that the major daily newspapers, for the most part, have dropped the ball when it comes to covering all this. You don't see stories about this in the New York Times. You do see them in the New York Post once in a while. You don't see them in the Washington Post. So you need to pay attention. And I will say that one of the places that you can find stuff, we are primarily a local news site based in South Florida. We cover local issues, but we also report about this, and we're going to keep reporting about it. So check us out. We're floridabulldog.org.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Dan Christensen with the Florida Bulldog. Please do check out his website and all the great work he's doing.
Hey, Derek, you take care. Have a nice evening.